RuneScape and Jagex is going to slowly shape it, and when finally the update comes out, I think it's going to be perfect, and most people are going to be able to like it and enjoy it for how it is.
Hey, I'm Silent Core. I'm really looking forward to seeing what type of pures can be created with the new combat level calculator.
Have you heard that supposedly Jagex paid over 8 big YouTubers $1,000 to make a video supporting EOC fully before it came out?
And you'll realize that tens, if not hundreds of thousands of players would be willing to pay for their old game back and for that old game experience.
Honestly, like I was saying before, if they kept the interfaces the same, if they kept all the weapons and armor the same and just added this action bar, it wouldn't even be that bad. Like, I would probably not think it as bad as it is now, but I just don't know what's happening really. So.
Hey, what's up guys, it's Tim and welcome to a new video where we'll be looking into a few different abilities in combat.
Hey guys, what's going on? It's me, a friend, and I want to say a few good things about the combat evolution.
To not evolve is to stagnate. Stagnation is death. And RuneScape tried to evolve too quickly, resulting in the game losing a massive part of its player base. But could it have been done better? Or was EOC doomed to fail? In this video we're going to take a look at why EOC almost killed RuneScape, so whenever you're ready, grab your cup of tea, sit back, relax, and enjoy. Back in and around 2011-2012, membership numbers were on a slow decline. Players were getting older and Jagex was looking for a solution to keep the game in a growing state. According to Mod PI in an interview with ex-mod Shawnee, Jagex wanted to appeal to a newer, younger audience being school kids. After doing research multiple times on the school kid demographic, the most frequent complaint was found to be the slow and boring combat time and time again. Back then, a good MMO combat system was usually compared to World of Warcraft as that was the golden standard. This is why they went down the ability bar and abilities path to appeal to those players looking for more exciting combat. The goal was to modernize and rebalance the combat system by changing every single monster in the game and their stats, adding new gear, removing existing spells, special attacks, and more. Players could test the new combat system in the Evolution of Combat Beta on June the 26th, 2012, a few months before the full actual update.
With the Evolution of Combat Beta launching today, you could be forgiven for thinking that the combat team are already high-fiving each other and booking trips to Paris to celebrate. But as I found out earlier, it turns out that the beta is just the start.
Players were able to give feedback after completing the tutorial, and this feedback was later shared on the official RuneScape website. The feedback seems surprisingly positive, especially if we consider the amount of outraged people, but according to a video by So Wrecked, a popular YouTuber at the time, there were only 2 beta worlds, and there were a concurrent of around 400 players testing it at all times. According to So Wrecked, the feedback might have been biased, as beta weekend events and cosmetic rewards were used to stimulate that feedback for those survey results. And according to another very prominent YouTuber from the time, Silent Core, players received experience for giving feedback. What's interesting is that Silent Core actually made his own EOC poll that crashed Google spreadsheets with the amount of replies in a short period of time, but with over 18,000 replies there was a 56% no vote against the evolution of combat. The beta did of course result in some changes, as some abilities were completely different to what they are today, like Sever dealing 300% weapon damage, Binding Shot binding your target for 20 seconds, Slaughter, which used to be called Hemorrhage, dealing 400% weapon damage over 10 seconds, and a lot of other things. But regardless of the changes, there was no stopping the EOC train at this point, and the reason as to why is something Mod PI explained on a podcast with ex-mod Shawnee. Before EOC was released, the developers were already working on new animations, skilling updates, and bosses.
But we'd created a whole backlog of updates that relied on this. So when we wrote EOC, it's not just KK, like we completely rewrote the animation system and the way in which the player presented themselves. So it was even like skilling updates that the code was branched off of EOC. So we got to this point where we're like, if we don't release EOC, we can't release all of these updates, and our update roadmap is we've got nothing to give to our players.
So they couldn't release those updates until the core combat system was put in place. The final weeks, days, and moments leading up to the Evolution of Combat release consisted of huge Falador riots, and I believe the final moments to be one of the saddest moments in RuneScape history. On the 20th of November 2012, Evolution of Combat was released. Was it bad, or did players simply dislike change? I think it was a mix of both. Players were outraged. Their entire world they put countless hours in was put upside down. Some existing items were rendered useless due to their special attacks being removed and crashed in price immediately. Tier escape ruined weapons and many players quit the game not long after. Not all items crashed in price of course, some items actually went up in value like Dagonov rings due to their crit bonus.
But like I said before in other videos, guys, I don't like Evolution of Combat. The reason why I do not like it is because there are more bad things to Evolution of Combat than there are good things.
RuneScape was in an extremely bad spot. It's no secret that the Evolution of Combat was absolutely dreadful in release, which only made it easier for players to quit the game. A key factor in the disgust towards EOC was the huge changes it made to the entire game all in one update. The worst thing of all is that there was no good way of getting used to the new combat system. Better said, converting from the old to the new in a serene manner. It was bam, in your face, combat, it's different now, suck it up. Now you did have momentum, but it wasn't very good. Content creators tried their best to explain and explore the combat and skilling aspects of EOC, but despite the fact that they tried to help, many players still ended up quitting. An interesting thing I found in research thanks to talking to another content creator is that 8 different content creators were apparently paid up to $1,000 at the time to create video guides on EOC just before its release. Now this isn't necessarily strange at all, in fact they probably would have created content on it anyway, but it's something you might not have known. You do now. About half of these videos are no longer available because they were either deleted or put on private. Back to the combat system, during EOC's release all you could do was either full manual or something called momentum.
People are telling me to use momentum, so whatever that is we're going to find out in the next episode. I'll see you soon.
One ability called momentum, and once you activate it, it will increase your basic attack damage by a lot.
The goal of momentum was to keep the traditional low-intensity combat in the game for the casuals or older players. It mainly boosted auto-attack damage and automatically used random basic abilities. The problem, however, was that momentum wasn't really that good, so you would be lacking compared to simply manually pressing your abilities. Another problem was the new combat level system being a max level of 200. The level 200 combat system was a misleading way to calculate your combat level, specifically an issue in the wilderness or PvP minigames. You could be level 200 with just level 99 defense and range despite not having level 99 hit points or prayer. Both of these issues were later fixed with the release of Revolution and Legacy combat mode, and of course the return of the 138 combat formula. Momentum was later completely removed in 2016. Players were finally getting the game back with Legacy combat mode, and on release many players came back to the game to try Legacy PKing for the first time.
If you scroll back on my Twitter, you'll find the day that Legacy released, because I had a big grin on my face because there was this picture of the wilderness was full again, and it was just this dead world for absolutely ages, and then like all of a sudden, oh my god, the wilderness has all the PKers back, and you know, like we gained, like a lot of people came back for Legacy.
It is worth noting that in 2013, a year before Legacy's release, Mark Gerhardt, the CEO of Jagex at the time, publicly acknowledged that EOC was rushed. Because so many people had quit, players would be able to vote on the potential release of an older version of the game to satisfy them instead. The petition passed with a whopping 449,000 votes, and Jagex opened up the 07scape servers, and it was a massive success. Old school RuneScape, also known as 07scape, is such an incredibly important part of RuneScape history, as without it RuneScape would have lost all of those players that had no interest in the new combat system forever. Both games benefit each other by existing and offering an alternative way of playing the same game. If you prefer a simpler and perhaps nostalgic experience, you would play old school RuneScape. If you prefer a more modern game, you would play RuneScape 3, now known as RuneScape. With old, converted and new players covered thanks to the improvements and 2 different versions of RuneScape excluding Classic, overall RuneScape started to do much better. That being said, the issues with EOC persisted throughout the years, and every year more and more problems were created, found or sometimes fixed. An example is the trample mechanic introduced for raids, where you would take heaps of damage by walking under a raid boss to stop players from walking those bosses and taking 0 damage. but that damage was way too high and it was fixed 10 months later. Even with the recent improvements to Revolution and other aspects of combat, in 2021 the combat system is still far from perfect. We still have dead clicks, stall imbalances, mechanics that hit you when you aren't even near the boss, unbalanced PvP, the dreadful tick system, and somewhat related issues to combat being death costs. But you know what? We're in a much better place now. RuneScape has evolved to something we can be proud of, and it's light years better than it was back when Evolution of Combat was released in 2012. I find the Evolution of Combat to be a terrible update with good intentions, and I believe that if it was as good as it is today with Revolution and Legacy Combat Mode included as alternatives, it might not have been received quite as negatively as in 2012. Thank you for watching.